Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. You've seen Ex Machina, right?
No.
Really?
I have no excuses.
You know what? This is not a predestination. You should see it, but it's not a predestination kind of a relationship defining film for us.
Right.
So it is quite good. I really enjoyed it. But what was interesting to me is that I had seen it when it came out and quite enjoyed it then, but I saw it by myself. And so I had never had the experience of watching it with anybody else. I watched it with my wife, who stopped watching about a half hour before the end. It was too much. Total tonal change in the film. She was like, I'm done. That was too much. I thought it was hey, we're going to make you think about AI, and it's going to be a really interesting kind of what if robot movie. And this turned into something that I can't watch anymore. Wow. Think about that. So I just want you to plant that in the back of your head, that we just watched that the other night, and it didn't go as well as I had expected it to.
Well, it's been duly planted.
Yeah. So you think about that. I want you to watch it with your dear spouse over there, and you tell me if the same thing happens.
Alrighty.
Surprise me. Really surprise me.
Will do. I saw a really interesting film.
Let's talk about it.
It's called The Hunter. Did you hear about this movie at all?
Is that like Human Centipede?
It's not like Human Centipede. Is it
an older one or a newer one?
2011. Not that old.
So we're talking Willem Dafoe Hunter.
Yes, and it was streaming, and so it's one of those ones that I'd kind of been curious about, and I watched it. Really interesting film. Willem Dafoe, Sam Neill. Willem Dafoe is this kind of mercenary hunter who's hired by this biotech company to go down to Tasmania and go through the wilderness to find the supposed Tasmanian tiger, even though everybody thinks it's extinct. But they're thinking that if he can find it, they want its DNA because it has some, I can't remember what it is, something that they want to own.
The golden ticket.
In the DNA of the Tasmanian
it's
tiger.
A musical.
That's where the golden ticket is.
The tiger has the golden ticket.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
And then he has all his little dancing orange Tasmanian devils around him. Kind of like Oompa Loompas.
Well, yes, that's right. This is good. I think we're making a better movie, I'm sure.
Yeah, must be. No, but it was a really interesting film that just kind of stuck with me. It's one of those kind of haunting films that was definitely worth watching. So I would recommend that to our listeners.
It's on the list. It's a shorty, 100 minutes. Easy.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
All right.
Not too bad.
I'll watch it.
You do that.
We have sadly no follow-up this week because we're as we've said to people before, we're recording these out of crazy order. Because right now, as you're listening to this, I'm on vacation. Pretty excited about that.
And I'm who knows? Twiddling my thumbs, wishing Pete invited me on his fun vacations.
Yep, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm sure we're having a great time.
I'm sure you are.
By now, we're probably coming home. Probably getting ready to come home. We're just starting to pack up and think about, vacation's over, cry. Yeah, so. Should we tell the people where we're from, probably?
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
No, it's the artist formerly known as Andy Nelson.
You're on it tonight. And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, number 2 in our 2015 duo of guilty pleasures with my pick, Prince's 1986 disaster, Under the Cherry Moon. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe on iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you weren't turned off by the movie selection this evening and you're still listening to this, you should probably head over to Instagram.com/TheNextReel and play The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #GuessTheMovieChallenge. And for that, we turn once again to Scotland, birthplace of ponies and quizzes, to the great Stephen Smart. Stephen!
Hey guys, Stephen here. Long-time Guess the Movie player Alexander Curran nailed it on Image 1 this week. The movie was the excellent The One I Love from 2010, directed by Mark Romanek and starring Keira Knightley, Carey Mulligan and Andrew Garfield. So congrats, Alexander Curran, you are entered once again to win the Pony Prize. As always, a new challenge starts Friday. So thanks guys, and see you later.
Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers.
Mine is this new film by James C. Strauss. I'm not quite sure who this James C. Strauss is. Directed Grace is Gone, The Winning Season, Lonesome Jim, one of the episodes of New York, I Love You. But it's his new film, Sundance hit People, Places, Things. And the reason that I desperately want to see this, and because if I can talk tonight, is because the fantastic Kiwi Jermaine Clement is in it and just looks delightful. He just is one of those people that you watch in a trailer like this and go, I want him to be my best friend because he's just so great.
But only for a little while, because he's kind of a downer.
He's a bit of a downer, yes. This looks like a really touching comedy drama, one of those sorts of things. Jermaine Clement plays Will Henry, a graphic novelist who caught his wife in flagrante delicto with, I believe it was a Broadway monologuist, is what he says.
Off Broadway.
Off Broadway monologuist, right? And they've got two young twin girls, and so they of course divorce, and he's kind of half taking care of his kids, trying to figure out his life as a teacher and this graphic novelist. And it's got this really touching vibe all the way through it, and the comedy really rings true with the characters in the film. And I've watched it a couple times now, and it just gets me every time. It just looks very sweet, very very honest, and very funny. So that's People, Places, Things.
I think so, too. He is just a charmer, although I can't help but get his evil cockatiel voice out of my head. I keep thinking he's going to break into song from Rio. I love Jermaine Clement, and I just, anytime I can see him, he's a guy I want to catch up with. So
absolutely,
very much looking forward to it.
It's got him, Regina Hall, Jessica Williams, Stephanie Allen. And it opens August 14th. I don't know if it's going to be a wide release, but it does look like something that everybody should go out and check.
I agree. My film this week is Mississippi Grind. A trailer came out just a couple of weeks ago. I'm pretty excited about this movie. It really fits with my favorite kind of road movie. Down on his luck, facing financial hardship, Gary. Or Jerry. How do you say that? Gerry. That's going to be Jerry, right? Jerry with a G.
Yeah, I think it's Jerry with a G.
Jerry with a G teams up with his younger, charismatic poker player, Curtis, in an attempt to change his luck. They go off on a road trip through the South to try to win back what has been lost. Stars Ryan Reynolds, who obviously I like very much, and Ben Mendelsohn, who has been in a ton of stuff. And he's really quite prolific. He was in Killing Them Softly, The Place Beyond the Pines, Exodus, Gods and Kings. Didn't see that one. Also, The Dark Knight.
And lest we forget my last guilty pleasure, Knowing.
Yes, that's a great connection, Andy. Thanks for bringing that little bit of trauma up for us. But most exciting, he is also in Star Wars anthology Rogue One, currently filming now. This is the sequitur. It's the non sequitur Star Wars film. No, it's the one that's not a part of the series, right? It's the character film.
No, well, Rogue One is kind of almost a prequel, isn't it? Because it takes place between episode 3 and 4, and it's kind of the rebels and I'm assuming Princess Leia as they go trying to steal the plans for the Death Star.
You're right. This is one that is. You're right. They're trying to steal the plans for the Death Star. That's good. I'm getting them all confused now. There's so many of them.
I know they're making it hard on us.
But this Ben Mendelsohn, he looks great as the desperate poker player in this film. I thought it looked like a really solid trailer. I'm very excited to see this. It was written and directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. I have seen really nothing that they have done. And they've done a few things.
Yeah, Half Nelson and Sugar are pretty big.
Yeah, I haven't seen them though. I mean, did you see them?
I saw some of Half Nelson. I never quite made it through. Actually, I don't know if they. I think they wrote Half Nelson. They were, I believe, the team behind the writing of Half Nelson. Ryan Fleck then directed it, and then I think they co-directed Sugar,
right?
Which shot here in Phoenix.
Oh, home turf.
I almost worked on it. Super close.
Did you see It's Kind of a Funny Story?
I didn't. That one didn't. I don't know. It was one of those ones where it kind of looked okay, and then just wasn't quite sure if it was worth my time, and I never got around to it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I didn't see it either. None of these things, and yet Mississippi Grind looks like a film that would be right up my alley. So I'm very excited to see it. What do you think?
I completely agree. It looks great. I think there's a nice chemistry between Ben and Ryan that really comes through in the trailer. It has that desperate gambler vibe that can be really hard on me to watch at times when you watch somebody who's addicted to gambling as they just keep going down the wrong road, making all the wrong decisions.
Because you're a desperate gambler?
Because it just rings so true. That's right.
It's sad, man. That's really sad.
Yes. Sorry. Didn't mean to go there. But no.
It was at the end of therapy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Thanks for bringing up such a painful subject.
Too close to the heart. This film comes out September 25th, 2015. Yet another September movie. Mm-hmm. Stacking them up. September is going to be an expensive month.
Lots of stuff. September kind of used to be a little bit of a January, but it seems like September is really picking up. There seems to be more and more good stuff to find.
They have run out of runway in summertime with these big tentpole films, and I think the season is growing. That's my theory.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. So, all right, Andy,
Pete,
if you wanted to buy a Sam Cooke album, where would you go?
Wreck a Stove?
Prince. His new motion picture, Under the Cherry Moon. Feel the beat. Feel the heat. Under the Cherry Moon.
All right, Andy, here we go. I don't know. I don't know where to begin. My guilty pleasure this year is, I think, ranks as... It wins a number of awards, starting with the guiltiest of all of the guilty pleasures we've done, but the list is long and distinguished from there. It is Under the Cherry Moon, written by Becky Johnston, directed by Prince. This is his directorial debut. It stars Prince, Jerome Benton, Stephen Berkoff, Emmanuel Saleh, Alexandra Stewart, and in her film debut, Kristin Scott Thomas, the Dame Kristin Scott Thomas.
Yeah, I saw that. She's a dame now.
Dame of the British Empire.
Oh, hoity-toity.
Check it out. And she started in a Prince movie.
It just proves you can make it no matter where you begin.
Now, I know you're not a huge fan of this film.
You do?
But you gave it on Letterboxd. You gave it half a star.
Right.
To which I replied, so you're saying there's a chance. There's a little love in this film.
I really gave it a half star because I couldn't give it a 0 star.
When I watched this movie again, I watched it again several months ago when I was trying to figure out what is my guilty pleasure going to be, because again we've talked about this. I don't feel like I did it justice last year with Buckaroo Banzai, because I really don't feel that guilty about that film, and so I watched it again, and it's not a good movie, and so then just this morning, last night I started it again, and this morning I watched it. I finished it up, and it really hammered home how awful of a film this is. It's a terrible film. It's a terrible script. It is difficult in some sequences, uncomfortably difficult to watch the actors do the most banal things. Like, they're not even doing uncomfortable things to watch. They're doing things like, walking together or talking, speaking, opening their mouths. It's uncomfortable because it's bad. I recognize that. And I kind of want to open the floodgates and let you know, I know it's terrible. And yet, I find Prince doing a black and white sort of Art Deco themed film set in Nice It's sort of a Dirty Rotten Scoundrels vibe. This hit me when I was at the height of my Prince fandom. I was regularly seeing him in concert. I was a big fan of the music and of the whole sort of industry that he spawned around his music and around the Revolution and Paisley Park. And this film just it sits very comfortably right in my heart. I watch it and I realize it's terrible, and I still smile. And that, I think, is the definition for me of a guilty pleasure.
Well, good.
Go ahead, lay into it. We're going to talk more about the individual thing, but I just wanted to get it out there.
I am really glad that you find pleasure in it. I mean, I don't want to take away anybody's pleasure that they find in anything. As long as there's something out there that somebody can attach to and enjoy, then I think the art is working in some sense, right?
Right.
So I give you that. I say kudos to Prince for making this for the right people to enjoy.
You and yet I would say this reading, I'm going to quote you to you from your Letterboxd, and for those of you who follow Andy on Letterboxd, you would know Andy tends to write usually at a minimum a couple of sentences on his little reviews, and yet when you get to Under the Cherry Moon, it's a half star, and you say awful, period, just awful, period.
Yeah, so there's a couple sentences. It was a very painful film to watch. I had problems with all of the acting. I am surprised that Kristin Scott Thomas has a career after this film. I'm so glad she does, because I actually really, really love her. I think she's an incredible actress, and she does actually shine through as somebody who actually knows how to act. Prince, I mean, I just watched Purple Rain for the first time, I don't know, a few months ago, and I didn't really get into that film very much either. I mean, I've never been a Prince fan like you are. I mean, I've never really been a Prince listener. I mean, I know kind of his hits and stuff, but that's really the extent of my world of Prince. I don't know anything. I knew none of the songs in this film except for Kiss. That was the only song that I even recognized.
You didn't know the title song, Under the Cherry Moon?
No, and I had a hard time even pinpointing the songs because they were so soft and kind of background. And I feel like, gosh, where is all the music in this film? Like, it's so different from Purple Rain,
yes,
which is really a music film. This one, I just had a hard time trying to even find the music. I couldn't figure out why it was black and white. I thought there would be some logical reason. I thought, oh, it's kind of this Art Deco black and white film. It must be taking place in like the 30s or something. Nope. It's actually modern, or 1984 or 1986 Nice. Okay, that's fine. I guess I just didn't really understand. I couldn't figure out the strange relationship between Prince and I guess it's his brother. I didn't realize it was his brother until I was reading about it afterward. But Chris and Tricky seemed like gay lovers to me more than anything, and I guess I couldn't figure them out at all.
What was it that confused you? Was it when Christopher Tracy is taking a bath and Tricky is throwing rose petals into the bath while reading a newspaper or sitting right over him?
It was after that when Christopher is going to get the phone because one of his many women, Mrs. Wellington, is calling, and I can't remember if he's like falling or he's sitting down, and Tricky like grabs him and like holds him, and they like have this look in their eyes at each other, like they're about to kiss, and I'm like, what is going on here? I totally couldn't figure it out. And then there's the really weird breathe off that they have a little later when they're kind of getting ready to fight, and they're
trying to give each other the eye.
Yeah, but they're like breathing at each other, and it was so weird. So the story was very problematic. It was illogical. Something about Prince that comes up in this film, I don't think it came up as much, if at all, in Purple Rain, which actually had quite a dark undertone, as I recall. This one had like these weird comedic moments, and it felt so unnatural to kind of hit these little moments.
Well, the problem, I think the central problem, and I don't want to steal your thunder or anything, but the central problem with most of the comedic moments is that they were not comedic.
No, it feels, well, and
they just weren't funny.
No, and I think what happens is it feels like exactly one of my biggest problems with watching Adam Sandler's films. Is it feels like he's taking all this money to go make a movie just so he can hang out and do wacky stuff with his friends and goof off. And this felt like Prince and Jerome Benton, as Tricky, basically making this movie and just doing wacky things because they're friends and they're like, oh, this would be funny, ha 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 ha. And they do these weird things that just nobody else gets. That's exactly what it felt like to me.
The film was originally to be directed by Mary Lambert. Did you see that? She was the director behind Pet Sematary and
I missed that.
Urban Legends films. I mean, she's been around, still directing a lot of TV movies and a lot of TV and music videos. And she was originally slated to schedule this or to direct this film for Prince. He took over from her and fired her due to our very favorite creative differences. And because it was filming in Europe, he didn't get in trouble by the Directors Guild because there is apparently, I did not know this, you probably know this, if you are starring in a film in the United States, you can't fire the director and take over as a lead actor.
Correct.
I did not know that. That's a thing.
That's a thing, yeah.
So, next time that comes up, I'm going to know. And so, I find that interesting, and I think it supports your thesis that, hey, I'm just going to take over because it'll really be my show, my friends, anyway.
Right, exactly. And I don't know, I guess the story is... it has kind of a, I don't want to call it a Romeo and Juliet vibe, but there's a little bit of the boy from the wrong side of the tracks. I mean, he's a gigolo after all, who falls for this rich girl who's going to inherit $50,000 when she marries this other guy, and he kind of ends up falling in love with her. So it's kind of got that wrong side of the tracks love connection sort of thing. And like you said, I was really watching for this because it kind of it piqued my curiosity when you told me it's kind of a Dirty Rotten Scoundrels sort of story. And there was just so little of that. I was actually quite disappointed that there wasn't more scandal going on with these guys trying to swindle money from people.
Yeah, becomes such a parenthetical thing, right? It exists a little bit in the beginning. When we see he's been swindling this rich, obviously the woman in white.
Is he actually swindling her, or is he just basically a gigolo and he's just making money off of her? I guess I'm a little confused by because they talk about, oh, we're going to get all this money. He wants to sleep with all the women with all the money, but it seems like all he's doing is really sleeping with them to get money from them.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair question. I feel like I'm reading into based at the end of the movie. And this, I think, is a fundamental problem with the script, right? Is that at the end of the movie, the truth comes out when Tricky comes out and says, he's scamming you. He wants you for the money. And she leaves. And then suddenly I get that sudden wash over me, right? All of the pieces suddenly fit together. Things I didn't know, thought he was a gigolo. Turns out they're scamming. It becomes more clear. So it's sort of the gift of that one sequence, but it doesn't build from anything, right?
Yeah,
there's no sense of scandal. There's no sense of intrigue. There's no sense of sort of the heist that you want from a film like this, even though it's a central theme of the story. It's how people talk about the story.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So Prince, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this element, but for me, one of the hardest things to watch in the film, and this is the thing that makes me actually avert my eyes, is watching Prince kiss.
Oh my God, I was totally going to say that.
It's so uncomfortable. I felt it took me so far out of the film that I found myself like pulling, that thing where you put your hands over your head and you start pulling your hair a little bit, like a stress pull. Do you do that? It's like you pull your hair out of your head because it's so uncomfortable for Kristin Scott Thomas. Like how I can't believe that she did that and didn't just walk off set, because it was a horrifying experience. It looked awful.
It did look awful. I wrote on my notes, disgusting kissed her. Why does she seem so horribly awkward with him? Or is it just that he's awkward?
Oh my God, he's awful. And they kept doing such close-ups. But this film is such an ego film for him, right? I mean, you can tell by the very first sequence after the opening, when he's at home, he's in bed, he's laying on his stomach writing his poetry. And the camera lingers on his like bejeweled form-fitting pants and glides up his body, right? So glides up the curve of his butt onto his back and his backless outfit, as he's leaning it's like a teen on bed writing in her diary. Well, this time it's Prince.
Right.
And he has sort of a diminutive figure, and so it's just a very, very strange ego pan that it just starts you off as a viewer in kind of an uncomfortable relationship with your protagonist.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't mean to make you uncomfortable talking about it. I will say Kristin Scott Thomas has a great quote from 2005, where she said, "When I left drama school, I was more afraid of not working at all than of the actual material I was being offered. And if you look at my very first film, you understand exactly what I mean."
Oh, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. So do you know any reason as to why he decided to, because they filmed this in color, I read, but do you know why he decided to make it black and white?
I don't.
Is there anything,
I don't, and I was curious about that too. I have no idea why they made it black and white, and we always had, my friends and I, when we first saw this film and originally kind of fell for it, we always thought, and knowing Prince, it was always back to that piano on a cliff. Like there is that incredible view of that piano that really they don't use.
Right. It just looks like a fun place to go play a piano.
Looks like a great place to play a piano. Not to maintain a piano, which is notoriously sensitive to things like ocean and sea air and salt and things like that. But it's cool in the film that looks so good in black and white that he probably just said, let's just do the whole film in black and white.
It makes me wonder, because Michael Ballhaus shot it, and he's a fantastic DP.
Yes.
I mean, he's been working, he started with Rainer Werner Fassbinder back in the 70s, and then when he came over here, he started working with John Sayles and James Foley and Martin Scorsese. I mean, he's big Martin Scorsese guy. He did, he's done tons of Martin Scorsese films, and interestingly enough, he also did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Yes.
But so it's he's got a huge list of films. I mean, he's a very impressive cinematographer. It makes me wonder how the film looks in color, and it makes me wonder what he thought of the black and white decision, or if he was a part of that decision.
I don't know. And you know what? When I saw that, I looked for it. He is. You're right. I mean, my goodness, his list of credits is stunning. I mean, he's done some incredible films, some of my very favorites. And you talk about great music movies, the Fabulous Baker Boys he did, and I loved the Fabulous Baker Boys. And because I thought the way he captured kind of intimacy, particularly with a piano, was really great. And I think that's one of the things out of Purple Rain that I think they don't give enough credit to Prince, is just his facility with these instruments. When he sits down and first starts playing Purple Rain on the piano in the basement, I think it leads me to really want to see more of that kind of music making in this film. And you're right, there really wasn't. The soundtrack to the film, which I also really like. I mean, it's an album I can really listen to. The music from Under the Cherry Moon. It is really underplayed, with the exception of a few songs. The dance number and it's just really underplayed. You don't get a sense to really show off how the camera can interact with music in this film, and I think that's a real shame.
When he writes catchy earworm songs, they can be really great songs. And Kiss is one of those songs, and it's in this film, but none of the other songs, I don't know. I guess I didn't hear them well enough to even be able to tell if it's something that I would even like or not. They just seemed so background. And so I just had a hard time really kind of getting into anything music-wise with it. And I mean, that's something with Prince is I do like the way that music was so integral to the plot of Purple Rain, and how the whole thing with his father and just looking at through all of the music that his father had in the basement, and that how that led to him finding Purple Rain, kind of like you were saying. I really liked that element of the story and how he finally came to that song and toning down his ego to listen to what these girls were doing and everything. This just didn't have that. I mean, it didn't have there was no connection to the music. And so for a Prince movie, I really expected much more music in the forefront of the film.
Well, let me tell you, let me get your sense of this. So the album is actually called Parade, music from the motion picture Under the Cherry Moon. Mm-hmm. The album was released March 24th, 1986, right? So the film was released July 4th, 1986.
Right.
So I think my experience with the music was probably very different from yours. Having never listened to the album, I was introduced to the music and knew every song inside and out after 3 months of playing it before the movie even hit.
Right.
And that, I think, changes the dynamic of your relationship with the music. For me, it certainly did, because I went in understanding how the songs kind of played together and understanding where, I mean, because there are some wonderful, beautiful instrumental pieces on Parade that are really, I think, leveraged pretty well in the film that sound like score material, but they're actually, I mean, they're songs that he released as part of Parade that I think you miss. I mean, I think to your point, you miss the connection with the music at all because it doesn't integrate very well with the story.
Exactly. I mean, in my notes, I wrote, finally a good song, Kiss. It's like, because I didn't hear, like, there was nothing that I could even connect to music-wise through anything else going on in the film. I mean, he plays around on the piano and he does a few things here, but nothing that I recognize. So I couldn't connect to anything in the film.
And I think that actually there are some songs on here that are, in terms of his catalog of music, there are some songs on here that I think are some of his very best, besides Kiss. And, he's got a fairly vast catalog. So
yeah, he's a very busy man. He's done a lot of albums under all sorts of different names and with different groups. And so, I mean, I think that he is a very talented individual. He strikes me as kind of a Madonna sort of personality. They're very big into their art and they're over the top and they are demanding and they kind of do what they want. And Madonna has made a lot of fumbles in her career, and she has certainly made a lot of really bad movies in her career. But she keeps cranking them out, and same thing with him. So, I mean, I think more power to him. And if he gets a chance to do stuff like this, then great. It just doesn't mean that it's going to be a very good end product.
The Becky Johnston, we brought up just briefly what she has written. I think she just is a fascinating set, a very small set of films that she has written. Her first screenplay was Under the Cherry Moon. Then she went on, I guess, to do script cleanup for Pat Conroy on Prince of Tides. And then...
but then she ended up with credit on that.
She got credit, right. Yeah, she got credit on that.
It's not like she was a script cleanup uncredited.
No.
Person.
And from what because I don't think Pat Conroy is. I mean, he's
he wrote the novel.
He wrote the novel. He is first and foremost a novelist. I don't. In terms of screenplay credit, he's not. He does not have. I think that's the one that he's got.
Yeah.
I guess he wrote the teleplay for a TV movie, Unconquered. But the rest is just the novels for, Great Santini and Lords of Discipline. And anyway, so back to Beck. So she did that, and then she went on to do 7 Years in Tibet. And I find that journey really interesting, going from Under the Cherry Moon to Brad Pitt, 7 Years in Tibet. How does that happen?
It's so strange to me. It's such a wild difference in. I mean, the last two feel like they fit. This is one of these things is not like the others sort of things. And Under the Cherry Moon is the one that definitely doesn't fit. The other two are big, heavy, overly dramatic, Oscar bait sorts of scripts.
And then her next film, she's joining Kurt Wimmer on Salt 2. And he wrote Salt, the first Salt, with Angelina Jolie.
Well, and she did another movie in 2012 called Arthur Newman with Colin Firth and Emily Blunt, a story of a man who fakes his own death and assumes a new identity in order to escape his life, who then moves in with a woman who's also trying to leave her past behind. Never heard of it. Not very high star rating on IMDb, so I don't know if there's much to it. But yeah, Salt 2, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that one. Because, I mean, I enjoyed the first one. It didn't knock my socks off or anything, but... Yeah, it is a very interesting writing career. I will give you that for sure.
It surprises me. So, okay, so Jerome Benton, you weren't so crazy about Tricky? Were there any? And let me back up before I ask about a specific character. Were there any characters in this film that gave you a chuckle? That anybody was there any redeeming value in any sequence that made you smile?
I don't recall. I don't think so. I mean, there probably was a line that Tricky had. I feel like there was a line that either Tricky said or that Prince said about Tricky's name. And does that ring a bell? Is there a line like someone says, "Oh, that's because he's so tricky," or I can't remember what it is, but there's something.
I don't know. I
actually don't mind Tricky. I don't mind Jerome Benton as Tricky. I just think the problem is that he has to interact with Prince in the film. And that's the big problem. I think he's actually kind of an interesting person to watch on screen. He actually has good screen presence. And even though he's not like the greatest actor, he is an interesting one to watch. And I think he's vastly superior to Prince, who I really have a problem watching Prince. I just don't feel like he's not meant to act. I don't think he's meant to act.
Jerome Benton is an interesting guy, and I it bums me out that because I think you're right. I think he's in the wrong place in this film. But he's very close to Prince. He was part of his band that the Family. I think that came out after the Revolution, and he was in Purple Rain. He was originally a part of Morris Day, and the time he worked behind the scenes, kind of backstage crew for Morris Day. And one day on the show, during a show, Morris Day says, "Somebody bring me a mirror," and Jerome Benton goes to the bathroom, rips the mirror off the wall, and runs out on stage and holds it up so that Morris Day can do his hair. And that is what really launched Jerome Benton as a musical character. He was the kind of a comedic dance partner, doing these kind of goofs with Morris Day when Morris Day was with The Time, and they were always playing with Prince. The Graffiti Bridge is very much sort of recaps that or showcases some of that relationship. And Under the Cherry Moon, it's kind of anomalous to see just these two guys, right? You don't get the bands that Prince is sort of known for cultivating, but and I think that takes Jerome kind of out of his element, and I really liked that. As much as I didn't like Prince out of his element, I really liked seeing Jerome Benton out of his element, because he was the highlight, the comedic kind of highlight of the film for me, even this most recent viewing. Not a great script, but I just like his face. I like watching him, I like watching him act, and as, not a great actor, but one with promise. And I wish we had seen him do more over the subsequent years. He's just been essentially silent.
Well, he probably is only acting when it comes to Prince's sort of stuff.
Right.
That's, yeah. So
he was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but it was part of, Jerome Benton as The Time. He did a TV series in Eve, Da Boom Crew, a TV series in 2004. But it's just, a handful of credits.
Right.
Which is too bad because I think he's a funny character guy.
He is. I mean, I remember enjoying him because he's in Purple Rain. He's Morris Day's like assistant or
right. That's his
right hand man.
That's his role, right?
Yeah, and I liked him. I liked that duo in Purple Rain. I connected with them more, and so I do like him. And I think you're right. He's somebody. There's something about him that you can kind of connect with a little bit. And so yes, I would say him and Kristin Scott Thomas. And actually, I mean, I do enjoy Stephen Berkoff as her father. I mean, he's casting him as a father. Just that he's going to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, geez, he was General Orloff in Octopussy. He was Maitland in Beverly Hills Cop. He was in Rambo. He's just one of these guys. He's just like got this evil look, and he carries it off really, really well.
He was Froda. He was Dirk Froda and the girl with the dragon tattoo. I mean, he is, and I really like him, and that's why I'm so surprised to see him every time I turn this film on, because he's just completely out of the blue that you would even see him. Apparently, it was very much of a last-minute casting decision. The actor who was originally slated to play the role of the father left a few weeks into shooting. I don't know who that actor was.
This seemed to be casting problems all around, because I also read that Kristin Scott Thomas was a replacement.
That's actually a better story too.
Susanna Melvoin?
Melvoin, yeah.
Yeah, she was a sister of Revolution member Wendy Melvoin and Prince's girlfriend at the time. She was supposed to play Mary Sharon, but she just was such a bad actress that they had to replace her, and Kristin Scott Thomas came along.
Wendy Melvoin, Wendy and Lisa, the duo Wendy and Lisa. So they were both in the Revolution, and then they spun off as the duo Wendy and Lisa, and they have been really quite prolific. They are a great band in their own rights. They actually did the original music for the TV show Heroes. They did the music for Touch. They've been working. I think they do some great stuff. They're most well known, I think, for their role on Prince and the Revolution in Purple Rain.
Right, because they're the two
Lisa.
that kind of...
Is the water warm enough? Yes, Lisa. Shall we begin? Yes, Lisa. I could go on.
Because they're the ones who come up with Purple Rain, right?
Yeah.
It's their song, right? Yeah.
Right. So you can learn about them at wendyandlisa.com.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So Kristin Scott Thomas, obviously, I think she's delightful just to watch in this as she navigates her way through it. I like just watching her act. She is charming and funny, working through a terrible script.
Well, it's just so funny. I just really couldn't figure out what to expect from her or the film.
Yeah.
When the very first thing that she does is she runs out, and it's her birthday party or something.
The worst line in the film, possibly.
Hey, everybody, what do you think of my new birthday suit? And she's like, she's just wearing a sheet, and she just rips it off. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Not sure where this is going.
Well, and then she goes and gets up in the band and plays the drums.
Right.
With a sheet wrapped around her.
In her toga.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like what I couldn't figure out, and this is, I think, plagues the entire film, these kinds of non-committal sequences, right? It would be fine. It would really be fine if she came out and delivered a line about like the birthday suit, and somehow there were some repercussions to that, right?
Right.
We get the feeling... There's sort of this sense that she's doing it because she has a disapproving father, right?
Right.
Her father isn't even there.
Right.
That's the whole point of this big party. He's essentially buying off her allegiance and didn't show up to the party. So he doesn't even there. He's not even there to be embarrassed by his daughter who's showing up and ripping off her clothes. So that level of just sort of here's a gag, and we're not going to completely commit to it. It's going to fizzle out in about 35 seconds, and we're going to move on to the next one that we will not commit to. It plagues this film. Every scene is full of these kinds, these sorts of elements, and it gets pretty frustrating toward the end when you see the movie trying desperately to give you some sort of a payoff that it hasn't earned at all.
No, that last scene, I actually went back and watched it twice because I'm like, did I fall asleep during something in here and just miss an element that happened? Because from the moment, because he's on the boat and then he gets off and she's running down and Tricky and his girlfriend are coming down and they're all kind of converging, and then of course he gets shot, the big dramatic moment, and then that's essentially it. I mean, you've got a few little bits after that between her and Tricky and all that sort of stuff. But I felt like I missed something in all of that. I'm like, what happened here?
There are two. It feels like there was something that was cut out because A, he didn't earn the bullet, right? I mean, he didn't earn being shot. And B, Tricky, how did Tricky get there? Right? Because Tricky was he was with Prince up on the dock, right? And then Prince went a different direction, got a boat, and arrived down at the beach. And Tricky arrived at Mary faster than Prince did.
Right.
That's like that. That has plagued me for 15 years. That is a ridiculous continuity thing that should have been resolved. 15 years. God, 25 years.
This is one of those films that is evidence that not everybody can direct a film. And Prince really should have stepped back and just let Mary direct it, or find somebody else to helm it who knew how to direct and tell a story. And they probably should have had somebody come in and fix the script, because it was just, like we've said, it's plagued with problems.
Plagued with problems.
But sometimes when a person latches on to something that they like, they see it and they don't see the problems. And it's clear that Prince just didn't see any of the problems with this film. He just saw a very artistic, touching poem, is kind of my impression of what he was trying to do here. It kind of this poetic sort of film that he was making. And I mean, there is one shot that I actually was like, oh, that's an interesting way to kind of play that. There's I think it's when Chris and Mary are, I can't remember if it's when they're making love for the first time or something like that, but there's that moment where, I can't remember where they are, but you've got this interesting composite shot where we see the wide shot of them as they're down below making love, and then it composites a close-up of her hand as we see her kind of moving, and then the hand kind of stops, and it looks almost like she's holding them as they're making love.
Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly. They're at the grotto. They're in the rocks, and there's the flame, and he is trying to somehow swallow her head.
Right, yes.
But you're right. He's kind of, her hand is up and he's kind of gripping her hand, and it's such a very slow transition into the fire.
It looks like that she's kind of holding them.
Yeah, you're right.
And I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting thing that he's doing here. So, I mean, at least I could tell there's somebody who is an artist behind it. It's just, I don't think he knows how to properly put an actual story together.
Yeah. What's better though is, and I'm looking at that shot right now. I'm just scrubbed through to it, and the look on her face. Well, it's probably similar to the look that's on your face while you watch this film. It is frustrated and bored, or maybe slightly drugged. It's not good. She's not enjoying herself.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. I think that the last bit of just kind of quick review is the to finish off the list of people who are in this film that surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Francesca Annis and Alexandra Stewart. So Francesca Annis is Mrs. Wellington. She was the lady in white.
Mm-hmm. And she's got a pretty decent filmography.
She's got quite a filmography. And I originally I couldn't tell what I had seen of her. She's done so much television, but she early on was in a whole slew of films, including she did the original TV Dune in 1984, right before this film.
Not the TV Dune. It was David Lynch's Dune.
David Lynch's Dune. Right. Not the sci-fi Dune.
Right.
Yeah.
She did that, and she did Krull right before that. So,
which was another. That's also on my short list of guilty pleasures. Ironically enough,
I would have said that, and except that I'd watched it fairly recently. I'm like, wow, there really isn't anything good to watch in this film. So it fell quickly off of my guilty pleasures list.
That's funny. It's only for the thing, for the actual star.
Oh yes,
that's why you watch it.
That is still cool. That is still cool.
Still cool. So Francesca Annis, especially because I liked Dune. It was really long,
weird,
and overwrought, and weird, but I actually liked it. And she, as Lady Jessica, it was interesting to see her go from that to this. We have, let's see, who else was interesting? Alexandra Stewart is known for. She also has a significant list of credits, 142 credits. Again, a lot of TV, but and a lot of French stuff.
Yeah,
that I have not seen, but she's very active and still working today.
I was actually surprised looking at Kristin Scott Thomas's filmography how many French projects she had, especially early in her career. I mean, I knew that she's like living in France now, and so she's doing all sorts of French projects now. I mean, I've Loved You So Long from about 7 years ago is a fantastic French film that she did. And The Woman in the Fifth, we talked about the trailer for that a couple years ago because that was yet another Ethan Hawke film. And filmed in France.
Right.
So she really does seem to be kind of somebody who does a lot of French projects. But early on in her career, I'm like, man, she was doing it then too.
Yeah, that's true. Boy, I mean, she comes from pretty much from under the cherry moon. I mean, she has just a handful of films through the late 80s, and then she's into French.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
She is really, I mean, she's a delight to just watch, and even in a terrible movie, she's a delight to watch. Even if she's, I mean, just muted, whatever. But she's super charming.
She is always charming. Yes.
The one that I always have trouble with is Emmanuelle Salé. She plays Katie, the hotel or the like apartment manager. And she's been in nothing, and she just disappeared, right? She did this film. I think she is adorable, and started looking for what else has she been in. She was in The Perils of Gwendoline in the Land of the Yik Yak, right before Under the Cherry Moon.
My personal favorite.
Right. And when you look at the cover, you can see this is fantastic. Gwendoline arrives in China in a box and is helped out of her immediate predicament by a female contact and a devil-may-care adventurer on a mission to find her father. Stars Tawny Kitaen, Brent Huff, and Zabu Brightman, and of course, Tawny Kitaen. Am I right?
Party, baby. I like the cover. It says Barbarella meets Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Adventure without shame. Pete, why aren't we doing this in one of our series?
What we should be doing. Goodness.
The Perils of Gwendoline in the Land of the Yik Yak.
So that was a frustrating thing, a frustrating non-find. I don't know where she went. I even went to the Prince message boards, and there is a rich discussion about Emmanuelle Salé from back in 2007-8 when somebody else tried to find her, and they found some just really apparently awful video of her saying some awful things about, I guess, Prince. I'm not sure, but it was. But I couldn't find the actual source video they were talking about, so that bummed me out. Did you note Victor Spinetti?
I don't know if I did.
He was one of the three kind of leches at the bar that always kind of showed up. He's been in a bunch of stuff, a lot of voice work. He was in he might look familiar in Help, 1965, Hard Day's Night, 1964 is big around the Beatles. And he was actually in Return of the Pink Panther. But he's got 72 credits to him, and is very active until he died in 2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can put a fork in it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody else that I think that's it.
All right. Then I guess we should. Did you happen to see how it did?
I did.
Did you? Because
this film,
it didn't do that well.
It did better than Volunteers, though. I give that credit probably to Prince's following. I don't think Tom Hanks had quite the following at that point in his career. This film cost $12 million to make, which adjusted for today's dollars is about $25.5 million. And it made just over $10 million, which adjusted is about $21.5 million. So it ended up losing money at the box office at a rate of about $40,000 per finished minute. So it's in our list of stinkers.
So, not as much of a stinker as others, right?
That's right. Still, but Baron Munchausen is still at the bottom. And it actually made more money, or I should say it lost less money per finished minute than Buckaroo Banzai did.
It lost less money per finished minute than Buckaroo. See, now that is a shame.
I would like to say of all of the guilty pleasures, mine knowing is the only one that actually made money.
Well played. Let's rank it.
Let's do it.
All right, head over to flickchart.com/the next reel. Click on our list of movies, and then click several pages to get all the way to the end, and then you'll see where this one ends up.
Oh,
I don't want people to think I can read the future, but let's just say.
Right out of the gate, I will tell you, Pete, I would watch Rush first.
We're going to have to rock, paper, scissors, because I definitely would not watch Rush first.
All right, well, let's see if it ends up in the bottom 5.
I could sense a new shirt for this year.
Oh, I don't think anyone would want that shirt.
All right, where do we start?
All right, we are going to be starting with Prince, Under the Cherry Moon.
You're going to have to not say it like that, because that just makes it hard to even listen to you.
Okay. Under the Cherry Moon. Or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes, indeed. Under the Cherry Moon. Or The Sandlot. Definitely The Sandlot.
The Sandlot, yeah.
Under the Cherry Moon or Major League?
Major League.
Major League.
See, I'm not blind to this.
You're
to
not.
The issues. I'm really not.
Impressed. I'm really impressed with you, Pete. I find myself much more defensive of my guilty pleasures. Oh, Under the Cherry Moon or The Dead Zone?
The Dead Zone.
Yes, Under the Cherry Moon or Alien Resurrection.
Alien Resurrection. Boy, it's fallen.
It is falling fast.
Really fallen fast.
Under the Cherry Moon or Pritzi's Honor?
Oh, yeah, Pritzi's Honor.
All right. Under the Cherry Moon or Rush?
Under the Cherry Moon.
And here I would pick Rush.
So in the fantasy land, where these are the only 2 movies, and you and I are stuck in front of the only television, we would have to do rock, paper, scissors.
We absolutely would.
Here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready. 1,
2, 3. Scissors.
Rock.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, Pete. Now I feel guilty.
Oh, man. That hurts more than any of the others that we've done.
I'm sorry.
That is the most painful. that we've ever done.
I feel guilty. Would you like me to reverse that and make it not the last place?
Man.
I'll happily do that
No,
for you.
I want you.
Now
No,
I hurt.
That would
for
not.
you.
That would not be right. And I want you to go to sleep with that feeling of pain.
Oh yes, I will hold that pain for life. Luckily, predestination that made up for all the damage that this has just done to our relationship.
Oh, jeez, I feel empty inside and cold. Wow.
Oh, Pete.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
Andy, thank you for indulging me. This is, as always, the Guilty Pleasure series. You know, I'm already starting to look forward to next year's Guilty Pleasure series.
I'm not sure what else we can find. It's gonna start getting really painful.
You know, would you just tell me real quick just the other films this year that you vetoed as your guilty pleasures that you didn't do? Can you name 2 or 3 of them that were interesting?
You know, I was really struggling trying to find guilty pleasures this year for some reason. I was going through bad movies or films generally rated poorly by the crowds, trying to find ones that I actually liked. And it wasn't until I was getting up into like the 50%-ish area that I started finding some. I'm like, well, I don't feel that guilty about that one. I mean, Swamp Thing was one that came to mind. And then I watched it again. I'm like, no, this is just a bad movie. I don't actually like it anymore. And I think that's the problem is the films that I find as guilty pleasures tend to be things that if I watch them again, I find myself not liking them anymore. And I think that's why I ended up falling to Tom Hanks, because I know he did a lot of really bad movies in the 80s. So others in my list, I suppose, would be The Man with One Red Shoe, which is one of my favorites of his. And while not anything near any of my favorites, Bachelor Party or Dragnet, those probably could have ended up in there too.
Yeah, for me, I was really latching on to, and I should add, Krull, I think, was also on my list for a while because of that thing. But I also had like Dragon Slayer on there, and but the one that it was like a coin toss away between that and this one was Phantasm.
That's actually kind of a cool little movie.
That was the problem, that I remember it, feeling guilty about it, but then I started looking at it again. I was like, wow, that was a fun little horror romp, and I love that little gadget. I don't feel all that guilty about that. And there are a lot of people who really, really like that movie, so I let that one go. And it spawned a number of sequels, and that guy, man, creepy guy.
No. Creepy old man.
Super creepy. So I it's the same problem as you have, though. I mean, it's like the films that you feel guilty about, either there's a reason they're so bad, like Under the Cherry Moon, or they're really not as bad as you remember. They're no rush.
Yeah. Like I said on last week's show, I mean, it seems to be films that hit you at a certain point in your life. So I think there's a narrow window to latch on to things that are guilty pleasures.
Yeah. And I think that, you just researching this film in particular, Under the Cherry Moon, really landed that connection for me. The fact that I had such a connection with Prince's music, and that this film became just another vessel to experience the music, is why I have it as a guilty pleasure. And I'm able to look past the fact that it is a horrendously terrible film.
Sure.
If you don't have that. And so I recognize that. And that's why it lives in canon, of guilty pleasure canon for me. So I can't wait to try, and it's a fight. It's a fight that takes a whole year of planning to come up with a really good guilty pleasure.
It really is. It's becoming quite the struggle. So we'll see. We'll see what we come up with the next year.
All right. Well, Andy, thank you for indulging me as always.
Hey,
yeah.
You know what we need to do?
I do. Well done.
Our new little tradition, which we need to try to remember.
Starting this tradition, really starting it with this film is sad.
Yes, I suppose. Yes, this is the Letterboxd review or Letterboxd rating.
Right. So what is the new part? Because we've talked about Letterboxd occasionally. So what are you doing different?
Well, on Letterboxd, we're going to actually I mean, typically what we do is we put kind of our little write-up on the review for Letterboxd, but now we're also going to include each of our star ratings. In the past, what we've always done is just taken our 2-star ratings and then averaged it out to come up with what we give it as the star rating. But now we're actually going to put each of our star ratings so people can see, oh, well, Pete clearly liked it more than Andy did.
This is our effort to... What is this an effort to do? Is this transparency in voting, or are you just trying to abdicate yourself when you don't agree with me or the film board group?
I think it's a little more fun. I think people can really kind of get a better sense that it really is kind of a group, that there are a lot of little opinions going into all of our discussions and our thoughts about all of the projects that we're talking about. Absolutely.
I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to give this one 1 star.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to give it 0, so we'll leave it at the half star that I ranked it myself.
Oh man!
I'm sorry. I feel so guilty. You're making me guilty about your guilty pleasure.
That there could not, in my book, there could not be a better outcome than you feeling guilty about my guilty pleasure film. That's great.
Oh, too funny.
Thanks, Andy. I got to go to bed.
All right, I am going to watch an Adam Sandler film to cleanse my palate.
I got the tickets to Pixels, the midnight showing. Woohoo! I can't believe that this actually has an average of 4.2, Andy, when we just gave it a half star. It's not a good movie, and I'm picking a 1 star that actually supports it. And I'll abbreviate this one a little bit. Okay, I saw this movie. It was relatively what I call a time bandit. It robbed me of 2 hours of my life that I will never get back. The most memorable parts of the movie were the popcorn I ate, which was pretty good. It was buttery. The other good memory, it was the Prince death scene. Yes, he was killed, and not a moment too soon. I actually laughed at this part because it was so poorly acted and over-animated. I was like, Eureka, it's a comedy. It's a bad one, but it's a comedy, and it's over. Yes. Do yourself a favor. Keep whatever money you were going to spend on this movie and ball it up and throw it down the street for a hobo. Believe me, you'll feel better about doing that than spending the money on this.
Fantastic.
Give your Prince money to a hobo.
Here. All right. Well, I am actually going to do a 4-star by Namepiece, who says it's no Casablanca, but it's funny, funky, campy fun. So, Under the Cherry Moon is a sinfully self-indulgent movie built around a self-indulgent, narcissistic, but supremely talented and charismatic star. That being said, it's a thoroughly enjoyable movie, particularly for loyal Prince fans like myself. The cinematography of this movie is more beautiful with each viewing. It's also very funny, most times where it's supposed to be. Prince and Jerome Benton have very good comic timing at certain spots, like when they're staring dreamily into each other's eyes. And some great lines emerge. Who didn't laugh when Tricky said he'd slap the waves out Chris's head?
Okay, that's a good line.
Prince and Kristin Scott Thomas do have decent chemistry. Scott Thomas does her best with a limited role, and she demonstrates the appeal that led to better roles down the line. The movie only lags when it tries to get too serious, but it has always been an overall delight. Last but certainly not least, the score and the soundtrack are incredible. The soundtrack, Parade, is a groundbreaking, albeit underappreciated LP of avant-garde funk and provides the thematic backbone for the movie. I can't wait for the DVD. A modified version of my prior review. I like how Namepiece gave us that. This was from a VHS review that Namepiece watched in 2002. I didn't know VHS tapes were still around in 2002.
Was it better on DVD? Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our two-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our Naughty Children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with The Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.